Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Rivers Network. And we come to you on this late February day after a very, very telling, very surprising game last night in Connecticut. I'll get to that in a second, but first let me remind you that sign up for the Mike Francesa newsletter, where you will get exclusive content as well as opportunities to win unique prizes. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, go to the Mike Francesa podcast, MikeFrancesAPodcast.com. And remember, it's free. You'll get the weekly newsletter delivered into your inbox, and you got a chance for some prizes. So, hey, can't beat that. All right. The Big East is about UConn and St. John's. It's been about UConn for a long time. Villanova's made a resurgence this year. They'll make the NCAA tournament, which will make the people in Philly very happy, but they're clearly third. Last night's game, I was looking forward to it. I went to the game at the Garden. I thought St. John's had a great chance to win that game, and they won it easier than I thought they would. And I came away with the idea that maybe, despite the problems that we've talked about all year on both ends of the floor, the vulnerabilities that this St. John's team has, that they've been able to overcome and just overcame during a very long win streak, they matched up very well with UConn. They turned UConn over dramatically. UConn turned the ball over repeatedly at the Garden, 15 turnovers in that game. And the size of St. John's, UConn's playing a smaller lineup. They need Reed to be on the floor and to be there and be present and be really good. And I thought that UConn was going to have to make the major adjustments. They were going to have to change ball carriers. Ball handlers. They were going to have to probably play a bigger lineup, which I think Pitino was expecting. But the bigger thing was this game was going to be, but the first game at the Garden was about St. John's and whether St. John's could continue what they started last year, where they really made great inroads into UConn and started to believe that they could play with Pitino's program on an even level with UConn. And let's be honest, they've been very successful against UConn. UConn had to answer here. And to say that UConn answered would be the understatement of the year, without question. What happened was you saw a championship-level team, which I had not seen UConn get back to since the first couple of days of this season. And defensively, I never saw them get to the level they got to last night all year this year. But you saw UConn have their supremacy challenged, and they answered in about as resounding a way as you possibly could, in not only embarrassing St. John's, but really just taking their heart away from them. They put a beating on St. John's last night and on a Pitino team that you never, ever see. This was an utter disaster. This was so bad that you wonder whether there will be any lasting effects on this St. John's team, which has had vulnerabilities that they've tried to patch up this year with the 3-forward lineup, with Mitchell playing a point forward in essence a lot of the time in the open floor, okay? Using their size, using their ability to get second shots and to force turnovers and to run the floor and get the guards to do what they did, play the hot hands and get the best they could out of what they knew were players that weren't perfect. These guys were not the defensive players that last year's team were. They were better shooters, but they're incredibly inconsistent. Plus, St. John's has a lot of reluctant three-point shooters. They don't want to shoot the three. Mitchell doesn't want to go near the three. I don't think he's made one all year. Hopkins doesn't want to shoot the three. Zuby doesn't want to shoot the three. And too many of their players, even guys who can shoot the three, are second-guessing their three. And they only take it when they have to or when they're wide open or really off an offensive rebound, which is the best time to take them because those are the ones you get really open looks. Because St. John struggles to get open looks. But first of all, let's take this from the UConn standpoint. UConn had two things they had to do in this game. And Danny knew it. And to say he had his team ready would, hey, you don't even have to say that when the game's 72-40 and St. John's misses their last 24 shots, which is almost hard to believe. UConn had to cut the turnovers down. They cut them from 15-3. They had to handle the big three, who had 50 points and 22 rebounds in the win at the Garden. And last night, those three players had 14 points, shot 5 of 23, and were non-factors. And the bloody lip that Zuby left the floor with was symbolic because that's what St. John's got last night. They got a bloody lip. They got more than a bloody lip. They got their rear ends kicked and driven into the ground. And if you were watching on television, which I was, you heard with about 10 minutes left during a timeout, Danny Hurley tell his team, "You've been great for 30 minutes. Don't let them up. Don't give them anything to feel good about." Kicked their rear ends. And that's exactly what they did. UConn ran them out of the state and sent them home with their tail between their legs, to where Pitino was so shell-shocked he had a 1-minute post game. Took the blame. Okay, what else is he going to do? He just had one of the worst beatings, if not the worst beating of his career. And UConn didn't turn the ball over. They got a great performance out of Reed, which meant they did not have to go to a bigger lineup, which allowed them to keep shooting away. And they don't have reluctant three shooters. They have guys that can't wait to shoot a three. Ball will shoot any three he gets his hands on. So will Caravan. So will Mullins. And they don't care what the range is. They don't care where they are. They don't care if they miss 3 or 4 in a row. They are going to shoot the next one. They are real three shooters. And there's 2 or 3 other guys on that team that can fill it up also. St. John's doesn't have that. They have a couple of guys who statistically shoot 35% from three. Okay. They have better three-point shooters than they had last year, but they're reluctant. They don't get open looks, and they aren't in any way consistent. Go look at what Darling, Jaxson, who I'll get to, and Sellers did from the floor last night. It was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. The whole night was embarrassing, and it just got worse and worse and worse. St. John's is going to beat you. They are going to beat you by turning you over, by intimidating you on the boards, banging you with their 3-headed forward monster who are all big, tough guys. They are going to get second chance points. They are going to score off the turnovers, and they are going to get fast break points. They are not a good half-court team. And the only time they operate at all that looks decent half court is when the ball goes into Zuby and then comes back out. Otherwise, they don't have a half court offense. They run the weave, it gets them nothing. They get no open look for Sellers, which is criminal. That's on Rick, that he hasn't done a better job of getting Sellers more open threes. He is the guy who's got to shoot the ball. You can get Jaxson, who you can't keep on the floor because his mistakes pile up. And last night he had 4 in a row at one point, which was almost mind-boggling. He has been an utter disaster, and I don't think you can count on him the rest of the way. Yes, he has offense, but he floats. He doesn't do the things that Pitino demands, and that doesn't keep him on the floor to use his offense because he can go to the basket, he can jump, he can score, but he's an airhead as a player, and he's not he's a two-guard, and he's an airhead. Last night, at one point, he didn't fight for a rebound. He got the rebound taken away from him. He got beat off the dribble. What else is new? He got beat to the corner for a 3. What else is new? Then he came down and turned the ball over so badly that it led to another run out and a dunk. Right in a row. Bink, 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 bink. That's his season. But last night, UConn was flawless. No turnovers. They went from 15-3. Reed, like he was shot out of a cannon, dominated the game, both ends of the floor. 42-12, they outscored St. John's in the paint. 42-12. That's usually St. John's country. Transition game, gave them nothing. Transition game, scored at will. Transition defense, flawless. Switching defense, which they hadn't showed. They switched a lot last night. And St. John's was late on all their switches. They were a step low. They were a step late, a step slow to the ball. They were a step slow off the ground last night. They were beaten at every juncture. And remember this game is 72-40. And UConn shot 7 for 25, 28% from three. If they have one of their nights where they shot 45 from three, this game would have been 90-40. They didn't shoot. I mean, they scored from two. They got the ball in the paint. Reed scored at will. They got dunks. They got layups. But they did not hit a ton of threes. Now, St. John's. We know they're vulnerable in the half-court attack. Last night, their half-court attack went from being tentative and erratic to completely non-existent. They didn't get any steals. They didn't get any turnovers. They got no points off their defense. They got no points off rebounds. They got no second chance points. They got no points in transition. They didn't get a running game going. So all the things that they do, okay, all the things that they do, they couldn't do last night. All the things that is really part and parcel of their game was shut down by UConn, and you have to give UConn credit for every bit of that last night. They took away what St. John's does. They took away what they do well. They took away what they do reasonably well. They exploited what they don't do well, and then they took their heart and they stomped it into the ground. And they said, don't even think for 1 second that your program, which has made incredible strides under one of the great coaches in college basketball history, don't think you are on our level for 1 second. And that's what they came away with. And it erased the first game, and it erased what went on last year. Now, hopefully St. John's will get another chance at them, because I'd love to see it from a psychological standpoint listen, the important thing here is the NCAA tournament. It's not Big East regular season. It's not even Big East tournament, folks. Yes, they want to hold up the trophy. Yes, they want that. But you know what? If they go out in the second round, if they go out the first Saturday or Sunday, after, playing in a 4-13 game, and they go out in the second round, no one cares if they won the Big East. Did anyone care they won the Big East last year when they lost to Calipari's team in the second round? No. Eventually, it's about winning in the tournament and getting a run going in the tournament. But this team first has to get its confidence back. And I can tell you right now, it can get some equilibrium against Nova. But the only way this team is going to get its swagger back is in another showdown and a good performance in the Garden against UConn in the Big East championship game, round 3. We all want that. Can we get an upset before that? Yes. Could somebody knock off? Yeah. They could catch Seton Hall on the wrong day when they're actually making shots. They could catch an improving Marquette team, which has got a really pesky guard who's getting better and better and better. Okay, Villanova has a game where they shoot the lights out. They can be dangerous. We've already seen Creighton go up and win at UConn. That's more on UConn than it was on Creighton. And Creighton lost to DePaul last night. Blew a big lead, as a matter of fact. But they won't get what they had built over this winning streak. They will not get that back with this group unless 2 weeks from now, little more than 2 weeks from now, they get a showdown in the Big East final against UConn and play well and play toe-to-toe. Now, the Big East teams have a habit of playing better in the NCAA tournament most years. Not every year, but most years. Because it's such a rugged league. on a lot of levels. The one thing the Big East teams have to watch against is their game in the Big East is so physical that sometimes you get you get an officials crew that calls it really tight and gets you in foul trouble in the NCAA tournament. It can happen when you're in a league that's rugged. That's hurt certain leagues at certain times. But this was such a stomping that, hey, today, on the ride home last night, today, there wasn't any sleeping from the coaches last night. It was nothing but work and thoughts about where do we go from here. Now, have I seen teams take this kind of beating? I always harken back when Rowley and Villanova upset Georgetown and Lexington, and of course, Patrick Ewing his second championship. That Villanova team, which almost lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament, which happens a lot of times though, and then got on a run. But that team lost to Pittsburgh the final week of the season by about 35 points and looked like it was just crawling into the NCAA tournament, and then wound up winning the whole thing. So you can come back from these defeats. Today, Pitino's message after he finishes, whether he burns the film or goes over the film and screams at them for an hour, or decides that they're so down that he's not going to scream at them for an hour, whatever he decides today, the bottom line is he's got to build them back up quickly for the Villanova game. I don't have a problem that they'll be able to do that. They will do that. I would be shocked if they didn't play spirited and well against Villanova on Saturday night. But that's not going to solve the problems. That's not going to make what people perceive of this team and what this team perceives of itself after that beating. That beating yesterday has lingering effects. Without question. What are they going to do with Jaxson? They try to leave him on the floor and let him overcome those mistakes that he keeps making all year that get him yanked out of the game all the time. We've seen it all year because he does have offensive ability. And St. John's needs that offensive ability. The bottom line is this team is always going to have these deficiencies. Their guards are not great defenders by any stretch of the imagination. They get beat off the dribble a lot. They get out, they get really beat by athletic guards all the time. Athletic guards are giving them trouble all year. Their size, their toughness with their big forwards and the 3-forward offense. But here's the thing, okay? We all know what Mitchell has meant to this team this year. We all know how that move made them a different team. But we also know what Mitchell's offensive limitations are, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. He cannot stay on the floor in a 72-40 game for 37 minutes and not score. That can't happen. We understand that on a regular night, he'll have his 7-8 rebounds and his 6 or 7 assists and his steals and his blocks. And that was limited last night because there weren't a lot of assists to go around, obviously. And he only had 5 rebounds. But he went 37 minutes last night and did not score, which means he didn't get any transition baskets. He didn't get any rebound baskets. He didn't get any easy dunks or layups or anything or beat anybody off the dribble because he is not a scorer. He can't make his free throws. He can't make a three. He doesn't have an offensive game. He doesn't even finish around the rim well, unless he dunks it. But 37 minutes, and we know what his talents are, but 37 minutes and no points, it can't happen. It can't happen. You know, in the NCAA tournament, the way this is set up and the premium that is put on the three-point goal, you cannot go in that tournament and think you're going to beat multiple opponents and better opponents if you can't make threes. And they have too many players who can't make threes, who are reluctant to make threes, and then can't get open to get threes. And when you have a guy who can make shots, like Sellers, you have to get him open looks. Every team gets three-point shooters open looks. St. John's does a terrible job of that in the half court. And they're usually off offensive rebounds or off Zuby getting the ball inside, getting double teamed, and then kicking the ball back out. They run the weave. It doesn't work much. They don't get guys open. And I thought Shannon gave them a lift. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you there was one killer possession in this game, which was this game was 9-2. And then they closed the gap a little bit. And it looked competitive, and then they went on their first 18-0 run, and later on they went on another 16-0 run. There was one killer basket, and I don't know if you'll remember it. You probably won't. Shannon had given them a big lift late in the first half, and they had the game at 38-24, and they had gotten a couple of stops. They missed an open three. They missed an easy shot. And then they played good defense. Reed got the offensive rebound, kicked it out to Ball, and he made the three to put him up 41-24. And it went 41-26 to the half. St. John's had the basket disallowed at the end of the half. But if they could have gotten that at 38-24 and come down and hit another three and gotten into the half at 11, it might have been a different game. That was the one basket that I thought broke their back. I mean, listen, to me, that was the only even glimpse I have an opening of them getting back in the game last night. That was it. That was the one. I never thought there was one in the second half. Usually in those games that are like that, where you're down big at the half, the first 3 minutes are going to tell you're either going to come out and dig in and make a quick move, or you're out of the game. If you let them get to the first timeout, if you let them get to the first TV timeout, and they've either kept the lead where it is or expanded it, it's over. 9 times out of 10, 95 times out of 100, it's over. And this one was over, and then came the embarrassment on top of embarrassment, on top of embarrassment, on top of mortification, and then finally capitulation from a Patino team, which means in the last 5 minutes, they just flat quit. They had nothing left. I'm not saying that they didn't give an effort in this game. They did. And he played most of his key guys. He didn't clear the bench until the last. He really didn't clear the bench at all, but he in the last 4 minutes, there wasn't much action either way. But my point is, they were so bad, they finally said, who cares what shot we throw up here? They scored a couple of, Prey and Darling got a couple of free throws and, made the game look a little more cosmetically palpable. But remember, they didn't score a basket in the last 17. The last basket in the game was Zuby's second basket of the second half. And he had a nightmare game last night. He got destroyed. But they didn't score a basket in the last 18 minutes of the game. 17:45 or something. They didn't score a basket. Not a basket. That's complete domination. And last night, UConn hopes they broke St. John's. We don't know if they did, but they hope they did. They hope they said, you know what? They were getting to a point where they were starting to think they were with us. And now we said, oh, yeah, we'll show you how you're with us. Check out our A game and tell us if you're with us. and they played an A game on both ends of the floor, and they were hungry. They went after rebounds. They were hungry. Reed was like a terror, and St. John's did so much stuff that they never do on both ends of the floor. So you want to just take it and throw it out, okay, in every way. But if you're looking big picture, as far as the Villanova game goes, I would throw this out. I think they'll respond. I'd be shocked if they didn't. And they might still win the 3 games against, I think it's Nova, Georgetown, and Seton Hall, and win a tiebreaker. Doesn't matter. What matters, if they can show that they can stand toe to toe with a big team before the tournament, that's how they would get real confidence back. And the only way that happens is if they have a showdown with UConn again. I said the other day that UConn was off the 2 line with what had happened the St. John's lost and the Creighton loss at home. And the way there were so many good teams this year, I figured they'd be a 3. That win last night and the way they responded opened the 2 line back up for them as a possibility. They're not going to be a 1 seed. They could be a 2 seed if they play really well to the stretch here and win the Big East tournament. The highest St. John's can get with their resume now, I would say, is a 4. I think they'd be a 4. They're a very likely 5. I've told you why I'd rather they were a 6 than a 5. I'd like to get off that 4 or 5 line if I can, because there's a couple of teams I don't want to see earlier. I understand you're only picking up 1 more game, but you know what? That game's important. That's a regional semifinal game. If I don't have to play Duke or Michigan until the regional final versus playing them in the conference semis, I'd be happy. And all right, I got to beat a little better team, but hey, the difference between team 6 in this country and team 12 in this country is nothing. I think there are 2 teams that are better than everybody. And I don't count Arizona in that. I think it's Duke and Michigan. I think they're on a higher level than everybody else. It doesn't mean they're going to win a championship. Doesn't mean they're going to have good games, because you know what? In a one and done format, anything can happen. But I think they're the 2 best teams. And then you can lump in Arizona, Kansas with Peterson, Houston, Iowa State, Illinois. Okay, we can go down the line. There's a lot of them. A lot of them in that league. I'm not a big Purdue fan. Some people are. Michigan State leaves me. You got to always watch Izzo, especially in the tournament. But I don't love the Michigan State team. I don't love Michigan State. I don't love Purdue. I think the Houston team will be very good in the tournament. And I think that Iowa State is extremely dangerous. Kansas is hard to figure because I just don't know what to make of Peterson game in and game out. I think that's almost a hard thing. I mean, Self has had some huge big Mondays this year at home in Lawrence, which is the hardest court to play on in the country. Never loses in a big game there. I don't think they're with the other guys. So there's a couple of teams I like to stay away from. But St. John's is not going anywhere. They're probably a 5. They could get to a 4. UConn's going to be a 3 or a 2. 2 would be max. 3's very likely. Very likely. If you're just looking ahead. And obviously, St. John's and UConn fans want bragging rights. Regular season title, nonsense. Win the Big East tournament. But again, we all know what the bottom line is. It's what you do in the NCAA tournament. That is everything. Get to the Sweet 16, you took step 1. Get to the Final Four, Shangri-La. Even for UConn this year, saying a Final Four visit would be impressive. This year, Danny doesn't have to win the championship. He did a couple of years ago. He had to win a championship with that great team, and he answered the bell. With this team, he doesn't have to win a championship. A Final Four would be like most teams. There's no team in this country this year that has to win the championship or they had a bad year. That includes Michigan and Duke. I'm sure Duke would be disappointed, but I'm sure Michigan would be disappointed. But again, it's not a given by any stretch of the imagination. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Every weakness was exposed. Give UConn credit for that. The vulnerabilities this team has are always present. They're going to always beat a mediocre team because they're going to turn them over. They're going to wear them down. They're in good shape and they're big and strong. That's going to work for them. That will overcome their deficiencies. They'll wear the team down, and we've seen them this year wear a lot of teams down. But they have not proved this year that they can beat great teams. And this is going to have in the back of their minds, unless they play great against UConn or really well against UConn and can hold their heads high, they're going to take some doubt into the NCAA tournament. There's no way around it. See, last year, you knew the 3 shooting could get them. We were all still stunned they played as badly as they did in that game. This team had some weird halves. I have not been happy with their half-court offense at all this year, at any point. And I really have wanted them to get their 3 shooters, especially Sellers, some open looks, and they have not done a good job of that at all. They are very weak in that area. They have to get in transition to score, and they have to turn you over to score, and they have to get offensive rebounds to score. That's just the way they are. That's just who they are. And last night they shut the big line down. I mean, those guys were 5 for, well, first of all, St. John's shot 19% for the game. For the game, they shot 19%. So if you're a St. John's fan, hey, are you guardedly optimistic? Okay. You want to tell me it's one game and that's all it was? Okay. But when a team takes your will and your heart away from you completely, a rival takes it, and they are a rival. I don't care what anybody says. Right now, they're the rival. They're the mark game. They're the game we all look to. They're the game we all circle when the season starts. So to try and sell that they're not a rival right now is nonsense. It's utter nonsensical garbage. It's just rhetoric. They are a rival. They are the team you're emulating. They are the team to beat in the conference. They are the standard bearers. And last night they showed that they still dominate this conference. When you get beat 72-40 and don't score on 24 straight shots from the floor, you got your rear end kicked as badly as humanly possible. They crawled back to Utopia Parkway. Okay, that's just the way it is. They crawled home. Right down 95, over the bridge. Okay. Right back into Jamaica, the States. They were battered and beaten and bruised, and now coach has got some work to do. The Jaxson thing has reached a point that he's tried everything. He doesn't fit a Patino system, which is going to ask you to follow the scouting report, be in the right place, attack the ball, attack the opponent, do the things that you're supposed to do on both ends of the floor. And he plays like an airhead. Does he have ability? He does. He can jump, he can shoot, but he's a mistake waiting to happen. And he has been a mistake waiting to happen. They aren't complete Last year they had a real backcourt. This year they don't. This year they try to piece the players together and get whatever they can. Let me slide him in. All right, Darling's hot. He's good today. Oh, he's playing. He's causing a fuss out there. He's turning people over. He's making some plays. He's getting in the lane. Fine. There are opponents you can use certain players against. There are opponents you can't. Last night they didn't have anybody that could play against UConn. UConn could beat anybody in the country. I don't think UConn's winning a championship this year. I do not. I don't think they can play that way for 6 games. I don't think Reed can play that way for 6 games. You'd have to show me. And I think they're up and down. And they rely really heavily on the 3-point shot. And I think at times their defense is an effort. It's not something they love doing. It's an effort. Last night they gave the effort in a big way. I don't know if they'll give that every night. They have to give it every night to be as good as they need to be. See, people really, in a completely erroneous fashion, started comparing this team in some ways to the other team, the championship team. I mean, please, that team had so much talent. They were a juggernaut. They were one of the best NCAA tournament teams of all time. Don't compare teams to that team. You might not see a team like that at UConn for 20 years or ever. That's how good that team was. But last night, they answered. And St. John's, now they have a chance to respond. They got knocked cold. They got to dust themselves off and get back in the fight, and they don't have a lot of time to feel sorry for themselves. All right, some emails before we say goodbye. Now, I want to touch on one thing before I get to the emails. We're right around the corner from NFL free agency. I have some thoughts on guys the Giants are after. I know a couple of guys I know the Giants are after. I'll get to that. The Jet quarterback situation. Hey, if that's Taylor saying hello. I'd like to sign Malik Willis. He's not going to sign with them. He's going to sign with the Dolphins. All right. There are a lot of guys out there. None of them is perfect. None of them. They're going to wind up with either a guy who's had some success, who's got has been away a while, like a car, or you hope can improve. Okay. But it's going to be a caretaker, and it's not going to be overly impressive. They're going to keep Hall. They've made that very clear, that one way or the other, they're keeping Hall. Hall's going to be on the team. I don't know if he's happy about that, but he's going to be on the team. They need a ton of help. They do have the makings of an offensive line. We know that. I think with Reich, their coaching should be better. But do I think there's a perfect guy out there? Other than would I sign Willis in a second, but he's not going to come there. I'm telling you right now. He's very close to Hafley. He knows the Green Bay guys who are in Miami now very well. They're going to jettison Tua. I know it's $99 million, but they can do it over 2 years. They're going to jettison Tua. I don't think he'd be available. He's the only one out there that I would be excited about. They need to get, I think, someone who has played the position, a veteran player, rather than say, go get a rattler. All right. I would get a veteran player who has played the position, and then I would draft a quarterback that I hope has some talent that I can, if he's there, I wouldn't reach for him. I wouldn't give up a premium pick for him. But I mean, if there's a guy that I think has great value at my pick, then I'm going to take him. I think they should take a quarterback, and I think they should put a veteran quarterback. I know there's a lot of talk about Carr. I don't think you're going to be overly excited, is my point, by who the quarterback is, no matter who it is. Other than, of course, Willis, who I don't think has any chance of coming to the Jets. All right, let me get to some emails quick, and then we'll say goodbye. Remember, send your emails to MikeFranciscoPodcast@gmail.com. This is Wilson. One thing about Jaxson thought was his lack of receivers last year, obviously. The offense could be dangerous with a healthy Nabers and a healthy Scatterbo. Absolutely. Now, I'm big on them drafting the safety at 5. I've made that clear. I talked to Harbaugh about that. You saw, listen to that. Do I like some of the receivers in the draft? Yes, but I'm not going to use the 5th pick for that. I think you can get great value in free agency or a trade or in the 2nd and 3rd round. I know the Giants are missing picks, but they can make some moves to add picks or use a pick down the line. Hey, you can get receivers who can really play on the 3rd and 4th round. That's a position where you can get guys on a lot of different rounds. There's a lot of receivers out there. I would not be surprised if they sign a veteran tight end. And I hope Scatterbo is healthy. I think Scatterbo is a unique player. Mike, who will be looked at as the better Met down the road, Piazza or Alonso? Listen, Alonso had a terrific career here. He's not Mike Piazza. I mean, Mike Piazza is the best hitting catcher probably of all time. I know he wasn't a great catcher, but he was a great hitter. And I do not put Alonso in Mike Piazza's class. Joe, did you get caught up in all the craziness with the U.S. team? I guess that means the hockey team and the White House. No, it's all politics. I don't care. That Trump wanted to use the hockey players as a prop. You know what? That was smart. Anybody's going to do that. That nothing yells patriotism and flag and success and America's great more than having a team that just upset Canada in the gold medal game. Now, he stubbed his toe with the women. He'll try to patch that up. He utilized the men, obviously, very well in his State of the Union. I thought they choreographed it very well. Now, I think the Olympic team has gotten a lot of mileage out of this, obviously. It was a terrific game. A terrific game. And obviously the goalie was, as everyone has alluded to, including the president, giving him the, Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor there is in the United States, is quite an honor. All right. Do you and Dog stay in touch? Do you miss doing Mike and the Mad Dog? Yeah, I miss Mike and the Mad Dog. Sometimes it was fun. We had a lot of crazy days. We had our fights. We had a lot of good times together. Remember, we were together for 20 years. We weren't together for a week or 2 weeks. Some people do shows now for 3 or 4 years and talk about how they have, a legacy. Hey, we were together for 20 years. It's a long time. Of course, Dog and I, to answer your question about the other part, Dog and I do stay in touch. We try to get a golf game together now and again when we can. We stay in touch about life stuff like the kids. Hey, this one's doing this one's doing that. Here's what's going on. He might run something past me. I might run something past him. We might talk about something, a different thing. He might call about a certain thing. I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? We talk. We get along very well. Probably get along better now than we ever have. So yes, I think we get along very well. We stay in touch. We text a lot. We don't see each other that much, but we're busy. He's especially busy, but I'm still busy, and he's still working every day. But we get along fine. And like I said, uh, we're very much attuned about, listen, I watched his kids grow up. He watched my kids grow up. We know the kids all, and so we talk about, whether Timmy's coaching or Jack playing football or Harrison working at Barstool or whatever it may be, or Colin in the business or whatever it may be. Walter, for the longest time, whether it was success or history, it felt like the Yankees meant something. They were looked upon differently than other teams. It doesn't seem to happen anymore. You're right. If Hal has allowed one thing to happen, he's allowed the Yankees to become ordinary. The Yankees were special. They were dominant. They acted special. They arrogantly coveted and protected their place at the top of the sport. Great teams do that. The Chicago Bulls did that. The Boston Celtics did that. The Montreal Canadiens did that. The Yankees did that. The Green Bay Packers did that. The Yankees don't do it anymore. Does the Yankee insignia still mean a lot? Yes. Does the uniform mean a lot? It always will. Does it strike fear into an opponent anymore? No. Does the building strike fear into an opponent anymore? No. Do the Yankees in the postseason strike fear into an opponent anymore? No. That edge is gone. They've let that slip away. We'll see you later.